Hey everybody, welcome. We're continuing our reading of this wonderful book. There were some parts in the previous that confused me a little bit, but we're getting into the flow. We're still in the section of envy, so let's continue. We're on page 28. This is the cover. Hamza Yusuf. Many Chinese conduct rituals to prevent the evil eye from afflicting their homes by placing mirrors on walls to reflect evil looks. Hey, that's interesting. The word invidious means envy, and it originally meant to look at something with a malevolent or evil eye. Ooh. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "The evil eye is true. The evil eye is not superstition." The Prophet, peace be upon him, worked to eradicate superstition from the minds of people. For example, the Arabs believed that when the moon eclipsed, it meant that a great person died. When a lunar eclipse occurred on the day the Prophet's infant son, Ibrahim, died, many of the Arabs were impressed by this phenomenon. While the charlatan would have seized the moment to take advantage of such an event, the Prophet, peace be upon him, announced to the people, "The moon is a sign of God. The sun is a sign of God. They do not eclipse for anyone." Interesting. So yeah, don't try to say it was for this or that. Definitely there were some religions in the past who really put so much emphasis on those, astrological celestial movements. Still today, there's quite a few. Imam Maulud explains that envy is exhibited when one desires that another person lose a blessing he or she has. Yes, he definitely made that clear for us. This loss could be anything big or small, a house, a car, a job, for example. An envious person may become resentful that a coworker was promoted. Oh snap, yeah, I literally just said that in the last video. Oh, it's true, man. I feel sad for it. It happens, man. To the point that he wishes the person to lose the position. Yeah, he's right. A woman may envy another woman because of her husband, such that she hopes that a marital crisis separate the couple. I mentioned that in the other one, yeah. That's a very familiar example. A man may grow envious of another man's wife. There are endless variations of envy, but a common thread is the desire that someone lose a blessing. Okay, so that's definitely clear. So envy involves the losing of the blessing. In essence, envy arises over what one perceives to be a blessing in someone else's possession. The grass always looks greener on the other side, but it might not be the case, and even if you got the blessing that they got, you might not like it the same way they liked it, or even be able to do a good enough job to maintain the blessing that you asked for. Be careful what you ask for, you just might get it, A blessing, nima, is something that God bestows. One of God's names is Al-Munim, the bestower of blessing. Envy, then, is to desire that a person lose whatever blessing God has given him or her. It is tantamount to saying that God should not have given this person a blessing, or, worse yet, that he was wrong to do so, because I deserve it more. As the Imam says, it may reach the point that an envier would himself remove the blessing if he were able to do so through some kind of ruse. It's hard. Yeah, that's a hard one, man, because if you're honest, that visceral, because envy can turn into hate too, so when you hate somebody, it can get that way too. However, what is perceived as a blessing could be based on a completely false notion, as one may desire something that in reality is nothing but trouble and difficulty. Yeah, somebody could say, oh, for example, let's take a hot dude, a really hot dude. You'd be like, man, that guy is really hot. And then you find out that he's a drinker, he's in mass debt, he likes to stay out all night, right? He's not just about the looks. So, very true. You might get it and then be like, what? Conversely, there could be a blessing hidden in something difficult. Very true. That is true. There is a well-known story about Al-Asma'i, the famous Arab philologist and compiler of poetry. When he once came upon a Boudin and was invited to enter his tent. In Boudin culture, the women serves guests in the presence of their husbands. This Boudin had a very beautiful wife, though he himself was quite unattractive. Lucky him. When the men went out to prepare a lamb for a meal, the guests couldn't resist saying to this woman, "How did such a beautiful woman like you marry such an ugly man like that?" The woman said, "Fear God. Perhaps he had done good works accepted by his Lord, and I am his reward." Oh, that's pretty cool that the woman was like, "I admit I'm beautiful, and yes, I'm a reward." God is all wise in what he gives to people. If one questions the blessing a person has received, then he or she is actually questioning the giver. Oh, questioning the giver. Which is like, implies a little bit of an insult, a little bit of ungratefulness. This makes envy reprehensible and forbidden. Okay, so that was the end of the envy on that part. Now we're going to deal with envy, but poem verses 59 through 62. As for the cure, it is to act contrary to one's caprice. So if you have an urge to do something that you feel like, oh, man, this isn't really what I should say to that person who you envy, try to resist it, right? Recognize your own vice, your own weakness, and work against it. For example, being beneficent to a person when it seems appealing to harm him, or praising him when you desire to find fault in him. I did that with there's a chick. She can be rude sometimes, right? She can be rude sometimes. And she'll say certain things, and I could have used that opportunity to be mean to her, but instead I told her, you know what? You're a hard worker, and I'm sorry this is happening to you. I said something like complimentary. And also, there was another chick who, she gives a lot of dirty stares. We call it, pardon my French, the resting bitch face. They call it, like girls who have like a mean stare, like they think they're all hot or whatever, right? She was going through something, and I said something very kind to her, to where I saw that she got a little bit of water in her eyes and broke eye contact with me, because I think she was so surprised at how mean she had been to me, yet I took that opportunity to be nice. And I told her a true compliment. It was true what I told her. She's very smart, and she does know a lot about the topics we must know. In fact, in certain areas, indeed, she knows more than me, and I'd let her know, right? Because I think she was sort of in a competition of wits with me, and I didn't want to be in that with her. I saw her as a teammate, not as competition, but I think she saw it the other way, and maybe that's why she was always giving me those dirty looks or something. But instead of me finding a way to put her down further, even though she was a mild enemy, I chose to choose the better route. And so, praise them when you could find fault. I did that. Also, the cure is in knowing that envy only harms the envier. It causes him to be grievously preoccupied. Yeah, I had another manager who, so many women managers suck. But she was just so catty, micromanaging me. Just everything she'd look at to see if it was perfect. If something wasn't polished right, she just was always on me. And I would go home with stress in my heart. I would carry so much weight, and I would sit and think about what it'd feel like just to curse her out. And then when her final day at work came, she was going to move back to Boston. I did not say bye to her. She wanted everyone to be like, bye. But I didn't say something rude to her. On her last day, I left without her seeing me leave the premises, so I didn't have to say goodbye to her and fake a goodbye like, oh, good luck in Boston. I wasn't going to do that because she was horrible. But I wasn't going to be like, hey, here's what I think about you before you go, because now you're not my manager anymore, so I can tell you what I really think. Sometimes you can do that, but that time I chose not to. But I understand when you can become grievously preoccupied. Now, that's not exactly envy, but I was envious at the fact that she got to abuse me without repercussions, even when I complained, because there wasn't an HR department. It's one of the problems when you work for certain companies. If they don't have a good HR department, you don't have enough legal recourse to get back at people. You basically just have to find a new job. So this is quite interesting to think about. With his object of envy today and tomorrow, he is thereby punished. Moreover, envy never befits the envier, nor does it remove from the one envied the blessing he has been given. That's true. So even if you envy that person, it's not going to take it away. And envy often, I would say, leads to dark arts. A lot of women choose, it's usually over a guy. Like women fearing that their husband go with a hot chick, and or that hot chick stole their guy, and now they want to do some type of witchcraft to punish the guy and her. I mean, it is quite interesting. Now, this is a fantasy example, but the Greek example of the goddess, she's not a goddess, but to the Greeks she was. Okay, so Hera, her name was Hera, she was jealous of, Hercules' mother, because Zeus slept with Hercules' mother and got Hercules in the world, and Hera was envious of the mother of Hercules and made Hercules do his 12 labors, made him go crazy, and he killed his whole family. That's the real story of Heracles, however you want to say it. So Hera is the perfect example of envy. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. I forget. It was not Socrates, and it was not Plato. I think it might have been Epictetus who said that. I can't remember which Greek philosopher said it, but it was a good example of what envy does. Indeed, their religion was false. However, there's classical examples we can relate to when it comes to that.